Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday night Rooftops of America Livestream. I'm your host, Scott Marthaler. Glad you guys are here. And I hope everybody's having a great weekend. Hold on, I'm going to raise this up just a hair. All right. So, we were originally supposed to have one every 2 weeks, but last week turned out to be bit of a challenge. We were coming back from spring break, driving back from Nashville on Saturday, and Sunday being Easter and all that, we just sort of chilled out. And the thought of having a live stream after a long day of driving the day before and getting all caught up it just didn't happen. So here we are, 1 week later. So I hope everybody had a great Easter holiday. I hope you guys over the last couple of weeks had a great last couple of weeks. Coolest thing I did during that time, besides hanging out with the family for spring break, was I actually was able to get over to Klingman's Dome and finally knock out the quote unquote safety episode that I had for years. Because having lived in Tennessee for years, that I had always been in my back pocket of, if I need content or if I need to go do something, I can always just run over to the Smokies and film that episode. Well, once we moved away, it became a lot more challenging, but I have finally got it all in the can. And yeah, you guys can expect to see it around the beginning of May. So editing it all together right now. It was a hell of a day. Went over, like I said, first week of April, went over on a Tuesday. And while I'm aware there were other spring breaks going on throughout the country, I was also reminded that the Smokies is always popular. And that place was just packed. It was absolutely crazy. I got up to the summit by about 8:15, and there were already probably 30-40 people up there already. It was wild. This is one of the hey Bill, that is a nice little duo there, the Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky grouping. Yeah, but Klingman's Dome was, I'm pretty sure that your travels were a whole lot less. I'd be surprised if you saw people at any of those. Though, if I was going to put money on where you could have seen people, I'd probably say Ohio would be the one. But yeah, Klingman's Dome, man, it was a long shoot for one day, and it was a reminder of just how crazy that park is. It's such a tourist trap in some ways. Hey Archie, how you doing? I actually drove. Originally, a long time ago, when I first sketched out this episode years ago, I always had thought, I'll hike up. And one of the things I was going to do too, back when we were still living in Tennessee, I was always with the mind, like, maybe if I go in February or March, I can, hike up the AT or even hike up Klingman's Dome Road. It's 7 miles, but it's doable because the road will be closed and nobody will be up there. So that never happened. That never panned out. So you get what you get. And, regardless, I think it still was, it's a beautiful area. Absolutely beautiful place. I love the Appalachians are near to my heart, I guess you'd say. They are so distinctly different from the other range, the Rockies or Nevadas. They're worn down and all that, but man, it's hard when you look at them just as this whole chain. and just picture that, 250 million years ago, these were monsters. They were, where you're walking in the ruins of mountains when you're walking through the Smokies. Um, hey, Lover Fishy, my brother Cody is here. How you doing, buddy? And hi, David. I'm glad you subscribed too. I hope that you've enjoyed the content so far, and there's more coming to it. So, um, yeah, I think if you have the time, the hike up Klingman's Dome would be so much more rewarding, and probably less aggravating if you can find a spot at a trailhead to park. So, in some ways, the AT through hikers have it made because they get they don't have to worry about parking because, man, parking in the Smokies, it's crazy. And the Park Service lately has started putting up barriers in that. So, because in the past, a lot of people were parking off and, off the sides of the roads and places that weren't really parking spots and, leading to erosion, stuff like that. And the Park Service is now blocking those areas off. So, parking has become even more of a premium in there. And if you get a nice day, you can expect a whole lot of people. So, I also learned that the Park Service has gotten around the entry fee. So, tips to people that are going to the Smokies, maybe this summer or in the future. It used to be you could just drive in free. And because, way back when Tennessee was deeding over the land, there was this provision that US 441, which goes right through from Cherokee to Gatlinburg, would never have a toll on it. And so the Smoky Mountains never really had an entry fee. Unlike, say Grand Canyon or, some of the other major parks. Well, they changed that. There's still no entry fee, but there is now parking permits. So if you're going to park for longer than 15 minutes, you have to get a parking permit. And you're going to want to get your parking permit before you decide to, say, venture all the way up to Klingman's Dome. So when you first come in at the respective visitor center, pay your $5, get your parking permit, put in the dash, then head on up, because that's the only places where there's the kiosks. So that was an interesting little loophole that they got around we'll never have a toll on the road. Well, you will have to pay to park. So traveling around and nice to have you here. Originally, Klingman's Dome was my seventh or eighth, maybe a little bit longer. I remember going to it in the first, I think in 2014. So within the first year, I had started highpointing. I had went up to Klingman's Dome. Archie, how many more Rooftops of the Solar System episodes are there? 2 for sure, maybe 3. Pluto is still being worked on, and then there's the follow-up. We'll actually get to the solar system high point after Pluto, and then I might just do a big overarching wrap-up of the series in general. That series has been a lot of fun to do, but it's really, in some ways, it's really time-consuming. I mean, more so than I ever would have expected for something that started off as a lark. Mainly because I want to get the science right. I want to get the geology of these places, as best I can. So they take a little bit more to produce. Plus, that for those that haven't watched them, you'll notice on those rooftops of the solar system, we're doing more, I guess, animation. We're using other programs to, show places. In that case, Universe Sandbox, Space Engine have been invaluable. NASA's stuff has been incredibly invaluable. And if you ever want to play around, I'd highly, Archie, yeah, Space Engine is a really cool program, and I would recommend it to anybody. If you got any interest in space, solar system, galaxies, the whole works, Space Engine is really cool. It is a cool program. So I think you can still get it for free. I know there's a paid version now on Steam, but I believe there's still a version out there that is free to the public. So you don't get all the bells and whistles, but you do get some cool stuff. So, but yeah, so Klingman's Dome coming out at the beginning of May. We're still editing Puerto Rico. Finally got all the voice lines recorded for that. We're locking down images, and that Sill's still going through a lot of the footage that was shot. We shot tons and tons then, and yeah, getting getting Pluto written, so that'll go up in June. So how's everybody doing? How has your week's been? What do you got planned for coming up in May? Anybody got any high points planned for May? I am considering Vermont in May, maybe around the third week, to go up there and do Mount Mansfield. I think I mentioned it before. It's the only high point yet, knock on wood, that I've ever busted out on. So I've always wanted to get back there and do it right. So cool story line behind Mount Mansfield, and I think it should be pretty fun. And May, the weather can be hit and miss, but Beholden Yeti Panorama Point in May. That could be fun. I remember traveling around in New Jersey in May. What's your only one left? If you don't mind me asking, on the East Coast then, after you do Jersey. And when are you thinking about doing Jersey? That's actually only about 2. Oh yeah, the big one. High Point's only about 2.5 hours away from me. So we've been up there a couple times. It's pretty. Yeah, Maine's on my list too, and I keep thinking. Any recommendations, Beholden Yeti? On I was debating Sunset. Um, I love our fishies. Heavy snowpack out in the Rockies, San Juan's, early July. I, as you well know, I too am a fair weather hiker when it comes to hiking in the Rockies. Who was going Panorama? Beholden Yeti Panorama Point in May. I was going to mention that we went to the Dakotas in May of 2018, and that was just rough. The weather in North Dakota was terrible. Cold, wet, windy. Yeah, so you never know what you're going to get, even in Nebraska. So very cool, very cool. Yeah, so Mansfield is the plan. I got one of the people that wanted to be here that is not Eric Kelly sent me a question actually, or a comment. He left a comment, and I figured I would talk about it real quick and walk through it with you guys. His question or comment is, could you talk about your favorite sources to use when planning a summit and researching historical content for the summit's region? He likes using Summit Posts, Wikipedia, WikiTravel, Google Maps, and shout out to Rooftops of America. Yay! And what's my workout routine leading up to a hike? And what is your diet, water intake leading up to a hike? Okay, so let's start with the stuff at the tail end, because the stuff at the beginning will take a little more to unpack. So Diet and exercise leading to a hike. I'm a larger guy. If you've ever get a chance to see me on the mountain, you will quickly know I am slow, strong but slow, and large. Um, Over 270 pounds. When I'm feeling light, probably closer to 280, 285 after the holidays. So, um, but what I found has been really helpful, besides just getting out and hiking, is particularly for the Rockies, is dragging the tire. I got a CrossFit harness, and I have a park right behind where our housing development is. And there's a football field on there. And about a month and a half, 2 months prior to the big hikes out west, I will drag that tire. Um, Drag it, put down a couple miles of walking, and then drag that tire for a good 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, um, on a regular basis. It has helped. My biggest challenge is never not being strong enough. It's normally when I'm getting out there, I'm coming from a place that we're at 500 feet of elevation, and normally I'm going to these peaks, and I've got um, 3 days, 4 days if I'm lucky. Acclimatization is we're going to cheat. So drink a lot of water, get super hydrated. Lover Fishy on the stream, she's the one that actually recommended this to me years and years ago. 2 weeks before getting out there, be pushing water, um, and get as much sleep as you can, and then you can usually battle the altitude sickness. So, but the best training for hiking is hiking. So get out and hit those trails. So, um, and if you can't do that, then I've got Valley Forge Historical Park near me, and I will walk and hike on those trails in the mornings. There's also, just to get the miles down. Um, Running here and there, but not anything crazy. So, Beholden Yanny. When I did Mansfield, it was midday and super cloudy, but the clouds kept pushing off the mountain every now and then. Sunset would be awesome. Seeing the sun go down past the Anrex would rule. That would be really cool. Yeah, Archie, you're at a severe disadvantage at on Long Island. All 26 feet. I think what's the highest point on Long Island? I think it's like 96 feet or something. Maybe it's more than that, but I don't think it's much. Janes Hill, yeah, that's the one. So, the other part is when I look at peaks. So, and how I arrive at the storylines I arrive at. Because if you've watched long enough, you'll see there's certain hooks. Oh, I'll just comment. Higher than Britton Hill. Well, that's something. All 345 feet of Britton Hill. But I think when I look at, say, we'll take Ebright Azimuth, since that one's right down the road for me. Knowing full well that there wasn't much in the way of content for the hike to Ebright Azimuth, which involves, literally pulling off the road and walking up the sidewalk, and you're there. Yeah, Lover Fishy, real quick in the chat for anybody that's curious. Super hydrate starting 2 weeks prior, 2 days prior, start alternating liquid, IV Gatorade and water, ibuprofen morning of climb and after. Yes, during climb, pause every time you feel your heart rate increase. Thank you. Yes, I have lived by her guidance on this ever since she told it to me in 2018, and it's never let me down. The only time I've had rough days is when I didn't strictly follow that. So, but that for me has worked. I know it's subjective for everybody, but for me that has been the best way to go about doing it. But when I look at peaks research wise, if I know there isn't going to be much of a hike, then I have to account for how I'm going to get content. Because Ebright Azimuth, if you haven't been there, or if you have, you well know, like, you can be on and off in less than 5 minutes. And walk away with whatever. But so for me, it became more of an interest to look at why that's the high point, because it's right on the border, and you have the arc, a very distinct state border, the only circular type border, man-made circular border in the country, and that became the hook. Because once you start looking at why Delaware exists, you get into this really cool history. And since Delaware was so small, I was able to shoot like in Newcastle. So I was able to do some location shooting there. I was able to hike out to the Mason-Dixon stone, the tri-point for Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Delaware that then goes due west, and all that stuff starts to inform the episode. So when I'm looking at stuff, I still read the trip reports, Summit Post, Peak Bagger. Sometimes you might get a little nugget here and there, but it usually starts with a Wikipedia. Quick, type in the thing and see what pops up. So Wikipedia, of course. News articles are always useful. Library of Congress is super useful for research, because you can, just looking through artifacts, you can see if you come across an old map of a place, and you could get a name that you hadn't recognized, or all this stuff starts to inform the episode. Tennessee, for example, Clingman's Dome. That name, Clingman's Dome, once you start digging into it, you really get the whole Elisha Mitchell, Thomas Clingman, this debate that was going back of which one was actually taller, and that whole thing. And you start also coming across, the Cherokee influence on the mountain, and how the mountain influenced Cherokee, and how Tennessee formed. And, you start finding out about the state of Franklin and all this stuff, all this history. And sometimes you get enough to have an episode, because sometimes it can be tough. But other times you get so much, you're just chopping things off for that just are never going to make the cut, because there's just too much. So you got to start calling on, you find that little storyline and you stick with it. So, but the big tools, like when I really research peaks, Wikipedia, of course, Library of Congress. I've used newspaper.com to dig into historical stuff, historical societies of the various communities around there. Not being afraid to literally reach out to a person in those places and say, hey, I'm looking for information about, well, take Wisconsin, looking for information on a guy named Leonard Reisberg, the person who actually determined Timms Hill is the state high point of Wisconsin. And, reaching out to Price County Historical Society and finding a picture of him, stuff like that. Same with like Hoy Crest, getting that picture of Charles Hoy. That was a huge coup, finding who this place is named for and actually seeing an image of him. That's always cool. So I don't know if, hopefully that will answer Eric's question. If not, I'm sure he will let me know. Favorite mountain I've climbed that wasn't a high point? Good question. Ooh, good question. It's going to sound foolish. Ochiaden Mound. I don't even know if I said the name right. Ochiaden Mound. If you go to Iowa, you're going to go to Hawkeye Point. But the longest time, there is a mound, Ochiaden Mound, to the east, about 10 miles to the east, almost due east. And that actually looks like a big hill. You can see it. Like, it's really there. Um, and there was just something about being on top of that particular. It's nothing impressive. I don't even know if you'd write home about it, but it was just really cool. It gave you um, this view of Iowa that you're never going to get from the high point. That's one of my personal favorites. Um, Others that I've enjoyed. Sentinel Peak. This is way before I even got into high pointing. Um, I wanted to get a picture of a little town like on West Virginia on the New River called the Narrows. And I hiked up this peak because I knew if I could get up there, there'd be this amazing view. And um, sure enough, it was a really fun hike. Nobody was out there, and just climb, climb, climb. But you got to the top, and if you, I think it's still there, but it's the if you ever go on Wikipedia and you type in the Narrows, I think it's Virginia, maybe it's West Virginia. It's right on the border. You will see this great view of this town, and I took that photo, and that was a favorite. Um, I don't, I see the comments down. Pinnacle Mountain outside Little Rock for Bill. Uh, Jessica Mount Sneffels. You had an experience though on Sneffels, I believe. Um, and Sick Tao for first winter climb, 13er. Old Rag at Shenandoah that is a great hike. I've done that one too. That one is good. Trying to think of others. That's a good question. It's a good question. I'll have to give it a little more thought. But I'm glad the commenters are going for it. All for broke. The Holden Yeti, Nogle Peak in New Mexico. Nice. That's a good one. Um, I'd love to do Truckus out there in New Mexico at some point. So there is a mountain. One of the special episodes of Rooftops of America I've always wanted to do, and I can't think of the peak's name, but mainly as the country came together, the high points reflected um, were already in place in some way. So you would say, okay, so take the Northwest Territory. You had Eagle Mountain. It was already a state. It would be eventually a state high point, but it was the territory high point. Southwest Territory, it would have been Klingman's Dome, stuff like that. But there's one particular area that doesn't. One piece of territory that didn't have. I don't even know if you'd call it territory. You gotta be. We'll figure this out later. But there was one chunk that we ended up getting that had a high point that didn't eventually become a state high point, and that's the Gadsden Purchase. And I want to actually get out and hike that particular mountain in Arizona at some point. And there you go. Yes, Archie, the Gadsden Purchase. Um, let's see. Yeah, 200 feet from top. Elk Mountain in the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma is pretty great. I'll take that one for a recommendation too. The Wichita Mountains is a place that I have never spent any time in, and I'd like to give it a go. There are places, man. There's many places that high pointing will take you to all these cool places, but there's still so much to see out there. So, um, let's see. Covered a lot of ground. Man, the time blows fast on this. It's already been a half hour. Uh, Here's a question for you guys. Is there we talked a little bit about last summer, but how are your plans shaping up? Are there any particular highlights you guys are looking for this summer? Let's see. It's crazy seeing the chat just scroll up. This is awesome. Big Bend National Park. Man, Big Bend National Park it's one that's on the list that I really hope to get to. It is a pretty place. So other things coming up. I think I've mentioned I think the last time I mentioned we didn't get the lottery, so we're going back to Arizona. And so that's going to probably happen around the tail end of August. Was going to happen near the middle of August, but I got my 30-year class reunion coming up in the middle of August, and I'm going to go. And on the way, I'm going to refilm Ohio. So I'll be stopping at Campbell Hill to punch that episode up and make it a whole lot more comprehensive. There's some good history there, some good stuff that I never was able to figure out the first time. So, and hopefully, Lover Fishy, your work schedule will be more generous for you being able to get out and hike. When were you at Campbell, Archie? When was it? This year or last year? Or not? Was it last year or the year before? I'll have to see. Hopefully, some of that will be resolved. Big road trip this summer to knock out Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, Virginia, and Kentucky. That's a good list. I liked that area in Kentucky. I know Black Mountain gets sort of a bum rap, and I should know I've been one of the people that give it a bum rap. I think that peak has a ton of potential. But man, that area is so pretty. The Cumberland Mountains are that is a pretty area. And then West Virginia, of course, and the Monongahela is just gorgeous as well. So much prettier than it has any right to be. So, no construction last Saturday. Thanks, Bill. Cool. As long as the radars are still spinning, I'll be happy. Any other questions you guys have before we sort of wrap it up in the next couple minutes? Any questions, comments, snide remarks, concerns? The next mini series you want to do after the solar system series. So we're going to totally shift gears here. Radar was spinning. So I have been working on for the last year of a series that's much more conducive to the area I'm living in than State High Points, called The 56. And it is on the life and times of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. The 250th anniversary is coming up in 2026. And so this is going to explore the 56 signers themselves. In fact, one of the books I just propped this up, but here's another one, the signers. Doing the research and all that. And we're going to start shooting that hopefully this summer. So that's going to be the next big series. If everything goes to plan, and who knows if it will, you'll not only get the YouTube series, but we're writing an actual mini series that we'll try to pitch to somebody, sort of in a Ken Burns style. So the mini series will involve the 13 colonies. The YouTube series will actually look at the individuals. So guys like Button Gwinnett, William Paca, Ben Franklin, of course, Thomas Jefferson, William Whipple, the good stuff. So I've been, I love, as you know, if you watch the series, yeah, I love history, and the series is rich with it. And I think it's just a really cool topic where a lot of people, they might know the big ones. They know John Hancock, of course. They know, Ben Franklin, good old TJ and John Adams. But beyond that, these guys are relative unknowns. Unless you're from Rhode Island, then everybody knows up there knows who Roger Sherman is. Um, so um, it is a coincidence. I don't think we could stretch it any more than that, Archie, on the 56 signers and 56 state and territory high points. Chris G, welcome. Hike the Three Waters Mountain. Oh, yeah. Isn't there another one in Glacier as well? That's like the Triple Divide. I can't think of the name of that peak, but that's a cool hike. So, but that's the big series coming up. Who intrigues me the most? Charles Carrollton intrigues me a lot. Um, he was an incredibly rich man, a slave owner in Maryland. But despite being one of the richest men in the colonies, call him the Jeff Bezos of his time or Warren Buffett, whatever, he had no rights to vote because he was a Catholic. So I think that dynamic is fascinating to me, that he's part and parcel of this, even though he's disenfranchised. And at the same time, he's disenfranchised, but he's also disenfranchising, the slaves that he owns. And that whole dynamic, like, these guys are fascinating because they're not, it's really easy. We've deified them over the 250 years since they did this, but they're just people. They're doing the best they can at the time. And that's fascinating to me is in 1776, when they signed the Declaration, they are quite literally signing their death warrant. In fact, one of them even comments on it. Like, they are putting their head in the noose by signing this document. And, think about it. In 1776, we aren't having much success. This is I don't want to say it's a long shot, but, you think about the Battle of Long Island is going to happen, around that same time. It's a devastating defeat. You start seeing, Philadelphia is going to get captured. All this is happening in 1776 in the latter part of the year. Like, it's the panic and the audacity, I guess. Once they sign this document, they are committed. Otherwise, they are done. So, I find that really interesting. I think we forget that. This is not a surefire thing in any way, shape, or form. Sears Tower. To answer Beholnia's question, was the tallest building you've ever been in? I've been in Sears Tower, and I've been in the Empire State Building. I've always wanted to get to the Chrysler Building because I believe, if I remember right, the Chrysler Building has the tallest, is it the tallest outside observatory? I can't remember. There's a thing about it that makes it really cool to me. And it's just a gorgeous building. But the Sears Tower in Chicago, Willis Tower, I guess they're calling it these days, that has been the tallest building I've ever been in. So I did, years ago, for an April Fool's joke, I did the 56 tallest buildings in the country. And that I could see that becoming a a thing in its own right. I could see people pursuing that. I think that would be pretty fun and interesting. Um, and there's a diversity in those buildings. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Number 2 in the world. Okay. We're coming up at 9:15, so 45 minutes. Any other questions, comments, anything that you would like more information about? If not, you may just want to hold those for the next one. We'll do it in 2 weeks. I think another interesting video is, yeah, I've thought about that one. The 198 country high points. I'd probably break it down into 2 to make it somewhat more consumable. I think other folks have done it, so I'd like to find a way to do it in my particular way, and maybe explore a bit more about these respective like country high points um, instead of the way they've been presented before. So, all right. Well, I want to thank everybody that dropped on in, and let's do this again in a couple weeks. And I should have said the drinking lamp was lit, by the way. This is a winding path, peach mango India pale ale. And before I forget, speaking of which, I'm going to give a shout out to a channel called Beer in Beautiful Places, led by Maddie, a woman named Maddie, who just started her AT through hike the other day. So if you guys are looking for another channel to check out, Beer in Beautiful Places, give it a look and encourage her on. She does some cool stuff. So, and on that note, I will sign off and say thanks again, everybody, for being here. I love doing this, and let's keep it going. So, talk to y'all later.